Officer hit a black man in public seconds. Later, he realized he assaulted his new
Hey, leave him alone!
boss. They say every storm starts with a single crack of thunder. This one began with a slap, a sound so sharp it
Darius,
cut
what did you
straight
do?
through the late afternoon silence of the downtown
Your body
plaza.
camera was deactivated
People
right before the
turned.
confrontation, officer.
Conversation
Explain why. I
stopped.
don't understand.
Even
Must
the
have malfunctioned.
pigeons scattered. Because that slap didn't land on a criminal. It landed on a black man simply tying the
strength of
lace
this
of his
city is not in
shoe,
its walls,
a man
but in
who
the hearts
hadn't
of its people.
spoken,
And
hadn't
tonight,
resisted,
our hearts beat
hadn't
as
even
one.
looked up yet. And the officer who struck him, he didn't know he had just laid hands on the wrong man. He didn't know that in seconds, his entire world, his badge, his career, his reputation would collapse. But right now, in this moment, he was drunk on the illusion of authority. "Get up," Officer Riggs barked, voice slicing the air like a warning siren. "You people don't get to loiter here." The crowd stiffened. A few phones lifted, but the man on the ground didn't rush, didn't flinch, didn't even show anger. He rose slowly, like someone who'd been through this scene before too many times to count. His name, not that the officer cared yet, was Darius King. Quiet, reserved, black, dressed in a simple charcoal sweatshirt, black joggers, no jewelry, no watch, no signs of wealth. Just peace in his eyes, the kind that scares the ones who rely on chaos to feel powerful. Riggs shoved him again. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Darius did lift his eyes then. Calm. Controlled. A still lake facing a raging storm. "Officer," he said softly, "I'm not resisting." "You better not be." Riggs shot back, already reaching for his cuffs. "Hands behind your back. Now." Gasps spread across the plaza. A teenager whispered, "He didn't do anything." A woman murmured, "Why is he treating him like that?" Riggs didn't care. He felt the eyes on him. He mistook fear for compliance, silence for weakness. He grabbed Darius's arm, and that's when a second voice broke through the tension. "Sir, I saw what he was doing. He wasn't causing trouble." A young barista from the coffee cart, Emma, stepped forward, still holding a milk jug. Her voice trembled, but it carried. Riggs spun toward her. "Back off. You're interfering with police instructions." "He didn't do anything," she insisted. "Last warning," Riggs snapped. "I said back. Off." Her breath hitched. She stepped back, but her eyes stayed locked on Darius, guilt and fury swirling together. Riggs gripped Darius harder, on the ground, face down. A hush fell so heavy it felt like nighttime, but Darius didn't move. His voice remained steady, almost too steady. "Officer, I'm not lying down on the pavement for tying my shoes." Riggs's jaw clenched. "You people always want to argue." Another shove. Harder this time. Phones raised higher. Someone whispered, "This is gonna go viral." Someone else muttered, "Man, this is bad." But Darius? He simply inhaled a slow, grounding breath. A breath he'd taken at 12 years old, when a mall security guard accused him of stealing candy he hadn't touched. A breath he'd taken at 22, when a bank manager told him, "You're not the type we approve loans for." The breath of a man who had endured and risen above every version of this moment. Riggs didn't see any of that. He only saw a target. He shoved Darius again. And that was his last mistake as a free man, because in exactly a few seconds he would learn who Darius King really was. The newly appointed chief executive of the entire precinct district, and the man who now had the power to suspend the officer with a single phone call. But the crowd didn't know yet. Riggs didn't know yet, only Darius knew. And he stood there, silent, as the storm he didn't start began to rip the plaza apart. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Darius King. The officer raised his hand again, and the plaza held its breath. For a moment, no one breathed. The plaza sat in a strange, trembling quiet, the kind that feels like the world is waiting to see who crosses the line next. Officer Riggs stood tense, jaw locked, fist still hovering in the space where he'd struck Darius King only seconds ago. A strike he believed would make the man fold, retreat, apologize. Instead, Darius simply straightened his back. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady. A quiet rise that looked less like obedience and more like ownership of the very air around him. From a distance, he didn't look like anyone who mattered to the system Officer Riggs thought he controlled. No pressed suit, no badge, no entourage, just black joggers, a charcoal sweatshirt, and a face that looked tired not from fear but from experience. And that was what unnerved the crowd the most. He didn't look surprised. He looked familiar with this scene. "Hands behind your back," Riggs barked again. turning louder because volume was the one weapon he still trusted. "You're interfering with police instructions, do you understand that?" Darius didn't answer. His silence wasn't defiance, it was calculation. He was watching, measuring, deciding, and that scared Riggs more than any raised voice could have. Across the plaza, Emma the barista with the milk jug still trembling in her hand stepped forward again. "Sir, please," she begged. He wasn't doing anything, he was tying his shoe. Riggs shot her a look sharp enough to cut. "Back off, or you're obstructing." Emma froze, caught between fear and conscience. Darius exhaled slowly, the kind of breath someone learns only after years of being treated like a threat before being treated like a person. "I'm not resisting," he said again, calm, measured. Riggs shoved him anyway. Phones went up higher. Murmurs grew thicker. A man near the fountain whispered, "This officer's done. He doesn't know it yet." Quote. But the person who noticed before anyone else, the first to truly see something different about the stranger being manhandled, was a boy no older than 13. He tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, I've seen that guy before. Isn't he on the city posters? For the new public safety board thing?" The mother hushed him quickly, eyes widening as she took a closer look. A ripple of recognition passed through her face. Because yes, she had seen him, not in person, but on news reports, on live-stream city hall meetings, on the mayor's announcement last week about reforming police oversight, but Riggs hadn't been paying attention to any of that. He didn't follow city politics. He didn't follow reform news. He followed instincts, bad ones, and right now those instincts told him power came from pressure. He grabbed Darius's wrist harder. That was the moment Darius finally spoke a little louder but still composed. "Officer, I'm asking you to stop touching me." "Cool." Riggs laughed. "You don't get to ask me anything." A memory flickered behind Darius's eyes. He was 19, walking home from his college library at night. Stopped, questioned, searched. "Wrong neighborhood, wrong color," the officer had said with a smirk he never forgot. Years later, after earning 2 degrees, after founding his own consulting firm, after being appointed to lead the District Public Safety Oversight Board, the same sentence echoed. Wrong neighborhood, wrong color, wrong assumption. The past lived inside him not as trauma but as fuel. Riggs yanked his arm again. "You deaf?" I said. "Officer, stop." The voice didn't come from Darius this time. It came from a young patrol woman standing behind Riggs officer Lena Ruiz, mid-20 seconds, stiff posture, eyes darting between the crowd and her partner. I don't think he's resisting," she said quietly. Riggs whipped around. "What did you just say?" Lena swallowed hard. "I said he's not resisting, and we're supposed to de-escalate when I'm in charge," Riggs snapped. "Not you, not the crowd, and definitely not." He turned back toward Darius with renewed aggression. "Him." Darius didn't blink. Emma lifted her voice again, shaking but determined. "Why are you treating him like a criminal?" Riggs barked. "Because he's acting like one." "He's standing still," she cried. "Herefuzit mi commands." "He tied his shoe." Riggs's face reddened. When an officer feels control slipping, they often double down instead of backing off. He stepped closer, too close chest, nearly touching Darius's. "On the ground," Riggs said through clenched teeth. "Now." Darius held the officer's gaze, calm enough to terrify him. "I will not lie on the ground," he said, "because I haven't done anything wrong." The crowd hummed with outrage. Lena whispered again. "Riggs, stop. This feels wrong. It's procedure." Riggs hissed. "No," Darius replied softly. "This is bias." Riggs's jaw clenched. And then, without warning, he shoved Darius again, harder than before. A collective gasp cracked through the plaza. Emma covered her mouth. The boy clutched his mother's arm. Phones surged higher, catching every angle. And for the first time, Darius's expression changed not fear, not anger, but resolve. Because that shove was the last straw. Not for him, he'd endured worse. But for the position he held, for the responsibility he carried. For the city that had entrusted him with the power to hold officers accountable. He straightened himself fully. And in the calmest voice the plaza had heard all day, he said, "Officer Riggs, I am giving you one final chance to step back." Riggs scoffed. "And who the hell do you think you are to give me a chance?" Darius didn't answer yet, but everyone watching could feel it. That the answer wasn't just coming. It was about to change everything. The plaza felt smaller now, not physically, but in the way tension compresses space, pushing everyone inward, trapping breath, tightening the air until even silence feels loud. The crowd didn't just watch anymore. They leaned in, held their phones tighter, their eyes sharper. Something was shifting, the kind of shift people feel in their bones before they understand it. Officer Riggs stood inches from Darius King, chest puffed, face flushed with a mix of authority and panic. He wasn't used to being challenged, certainly not by someone who refused to raise his voice, or bow his head, or crumble the way Riggs expected. "You think you're in a position to warn me?" Riggs growled. Darius's stance didn't change. His voice didn't shake. His breath didn't quicken. He stood like someone who had learned long ago that the most dangerous man in a fight is the one who doesn't need to prove anything. The crowd felt that power before Riggs did. A woman near the fountain whispered, "He's too calm. Who is this guy?" The teenager who'd recognized Darius tugged on his mother again. "Mom, I know it's him. He was in that town hall video, the one about the new Oversight board." His mother sucked in a sharp breath, eyes widening. Oh my God. But Riggs still didn't see the storm forming around him. He jabbed a finger into Darius's shoulder. "Let me make something clear. Out here, I decide what's a threat." Quote. Darius didn't react to the jab. He simply looked at the finger, then back into Riggs's eyes. "Then maybe," he said quietly, "it's time someone reevaluated what you call a threat." A murmur rippled across the plaza. Riggs didn't hear it, but Lena Ruiz did. The young patrolwoman shifted nervously, her hand near her radio but not raising it. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Riggs, this is going too far." Riggs snapped. "Officer, I said stay out of it." Quote. Lena flinched but didn't move. Emma the barista found her courage again. "He's not even resisting. You're hurting him." Riggs threw a sharp glare at her. "One more word and you're interfering." But the word had already spread. People stepped closer. Phones lifted higher. A businessman in a gray suit muttered, "He didn't do anything. This is harassment." A jogger who'd stopped to watch added, "This officer's out of control." Quote. Riggs's breathing grew heavier not from exertion, but from fear masquerading as dominance. A man losing grip. A man falling back on aggression because it was the only language he trusted. "Turn around," Riggs ordered. "Hands behind your back." Darius tilted his head slightly, not defiant, but questioning the absurdity. "For what charge?" he asked. Riggs didn't hesitate. "Failure to comply." "What order did I fail to comply with?" Darius asked calmly. Riggs spat back. "Every order." Quote. Darius repeated. "What charge?" Riggs wasn't expecting to be questioned. Bullies rarely are. He felt the eyes on him, hundreds of them. He felt the phones recording every inconsistency, every slip, every injustice. "Stop resisting!" Riggs barked suddenly. But Darius hadn't moved. Every witness saw that. Every phone recorded it. Every viewer who would eventually watch the clip would freeze, rewind, and replay this exact moment. Officer Lena spoke again, a little louder this time. "Riggs, he's not resisting." Riggs barked, "I said he is." The plaza erupted with voices. "He didn't do anything." "He was tying his shoe." "Why are you yelling?" "Man, this is messed up." But Riggs had already decided on his truth, facts be damned. He reached for his cuffs. That was when Darius finally shifted. Not backward, not forward. Just centered himself. A subtle step into equilibrium, a grounding, a refusal to be pushed off balance even by force. He spoke low, steady, deadly clear. "Officer Riggs, you are escalating a situation that does not require force." Riggs scoffed. "I decide that." "And that," Darius replied, "is exactly the problem." Phones went even higher. The businessman muttered, "He's right." Lena took a half step forward, torn between loyalty to her partner and the overwhelming realization that the man being shoved was not a threat, but a mirror reflecting everything wrong with the moment. "Riggs," she said again, more firmly this time, "he's not resisting, and you're not following protocol." Riggs turned, voice slicing through the tension. "You want protocol? I'll show you protocol." He grabbed Darius's arm violently. The crowd let out a collective gasp. "Emma screamed. 'Hey, stop!' the teenager shouted. 'Mom, record it! Record it!' Lena reached out instinctively. "Riggs, don't." But Riggs pushed Darius harder enough that the man stumbled one step back. Not enough to fall, just enough to show intent. Just enough to break the final thread of restraint in the plaza. Because everyone saw the truth now. This wasn't enforcement. This wasn't compliance. This wasn't protocol. This was punishment for existing. Darius steadied himself, and in a voice that carried across the entire plaza, coded in calm authority, he said, "Officer Riggs, I am asking you for the final time. Step back." Quote. Riggs laughed sharp, reckless, trembling with ignorance. "And what exactly are you going to do if I don't?" Darius didn't answer. "Not yet, but the answer was coming. And when it arrived, it would end Riggs's entire career. Before Riggs could speak again, a voice rose from somewhere behind the gathering crowd. "I know who he is." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, but that quiet landed heavier than any shout. The crowd parted slightly, revealing the source. A middle-aged man in a city maintenance vest, holding a rolled-up map of the district's infrastructure. He looked nervous but determined. "That's Darius King," he said, "the one appointed to lead the new Public Safety Oversight Board." A hush swept over the plaza. Riggs blinked. He hadn't expected any interference, much less a name, and certainly not that name. The maintenance worker continued, voice steadier now. "I saw him on the city broadcast. The mayor introduced him last week. He's not a threat. He's your boss, technically." Gasps rippled through the crowd like electricity. Emma froze. The teenager looked like his brain had just rebooted. Even Officer Lena's eyes widened with shock. But the only person whose expression didn't change was Darius himself. Riggs barked a forced laugh, the desperate kind. "Boss? Him? Dressed like that?" His voice cracked at the edges, defensive and brittle. "This is some prank. Don't fall for it." The maintenance worker shook his head. "No, it's him. I remember his speech, 'Public safety must be servant, not ruler.' I remember that line because I believed it." Others in the crowd nodded faintly. Some pulled out their phones, searching. A few confirmed silently to each other. Lena whispered, barely audible, "Oh my God, quo." Riggs saw the shift in the crowd, the doubt, the realization, the turning tide he could no longer control. So he did what reckless men do when the ground starts crumbling under them. He doubled down. "I don't care who he thinks he is," Riggs snapped. "He refused my orders. That's all that matters." "No," Lena said softly. "That's not all that matters." Riggs turned on her. "What is your problem today? You hit a man who wasn't resisting," she said, trembling but unbroken. "And now you want to arrest someone the city just appointed to oversee our department." Her voice wasn't loud, but truth has its own volume. Riggs's face drained of color. But Emma wasn't done. She stepped forward again, heart pounding, voice cracking with anger and fear. "He didn't even touch you. You hit him. You shoved him. We all saw it." Others echoed, "Yeah, we saw everything. He wasn't resisting." "You're abusing power," Riggs shouted. "Everybody step back now!" Quote. But nobody moved. The crowd had stopped being bystanders. They had become witnesses. And the thing about witnesses is once awakened, they don't go back to sleep. Lena reached out again, this time grabbing Riggs's arm. "Stop. This ends now." Riggs ripped his arm away. "Don't touch me. I'm the senior officer here." "That doesn't mean you're right," she said. The plaza swelled with energy, anger, disbelief, solidarity. Darius finally spoke. "Officer Lena," he said gently, "thank you for stepping forward." Lena swallowed hard, her eyes darting to him. "Sir, are you really?" "Yes," he answered calmly. "I am." Riggs barked. No, I'm not buying this. If you were really someone in charge, you'd..." "What?" Darius asked softly. "Look richer? Dress richer? Speak softer? Move differently?" Riggs froze, because the answer was yes, even though he didn't dare say it. The teenager suddenly shouted, "I found him! Look!" Quote. He held up his phone, showing a news photo of Darius at a press conference. Same eyes, same calm posture, same quiet dignity. The crowd gasped. Emma whispered, "It is him." Lena's hand fell to her side, her face pale with realization. Riggs's breath turned shallow. He took a step back, the first backward step he'd taken all day. Darius didn't follow. He simply existed in his own stillness, letting the truth settle like dust after an explosion. "Officer Riggs," Darius said at last, "I gave you a chance to step back, not as a superior, not as an official, but as a human being." Riggs said nothing. Darius stepped forward, not in threat, but in absolute clarity. "And now," Darius continued, "the witnesses have spoken." The plaza grew so silent it felt unreal, as if the city itself were leaning in. Riggs's hands trembled. But Darius's voice remained calm, even surgical. "From this moment," Darius said, "nothing you do can be undone." And the weight of that truth landed on Riggs like a verdict he had sentenced himself. The moment the truth hit that the man Riggs had shoved, struck, and demeaned was in fact the newly appointed authority over police conduct, the plaza didn't get louder. It got quieter, a dangerous kind of quiet. A courtroom before the verdict quiet. A quiet that made Riggs's badge feel heavier than his gun. He took another small step back, throat working, eyes darting between Darius, the crowd, the phones, Lena, the teenager holding the news photo. Every angle of reality pinned him like a spotlight. But panic doesn't surrender. It claws. Riggs's voice cracked as he tried to rebuild the facade he had just shattered. Everyone calm down. This could be a misunderstanding, he stammered. He didn't identify himself. Darius's eyes narrowed. When, he asked softly, was I required to? Riggs opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Because there was no requirement. There was only bias. Unfiltered, unhidden, unchallenged until today. And then Riggs did the one thing desperate men do. He reached for the radio on his shoulder. Dispatch, I need... Lena grabbed his wrist. Stop, she said sharply. You call this in, and you're escalating a use of force incident against the man who oversees our department. Quote. Riggs yanked his hand away. You don't tell me what to do. But his voice wasn't the voice from 10 minutes ago. This one shook. This one trembled. This one sounded like the beginning of an ending. The maintenance worker shook his head. He's trying to cover himself. Emma stepped forward again, hands shaking from adrenaline. What are you doing? You hit him! You shoved him twice! Riggs spun toward her. You're interfering. Stay back! No, she said. And for the first time, her voice didn't tremble. No one is stepping back. People murmured agreement. The crowd grew tighter, more sure of its own power. A businessman muttered, This is on camera from 20 angles. A college student added, He's done, man. He's finished. Riggs tried to push through the noise. He resisted. He didn't. Lena cut in. He was aggressive. He wasn't. He threatened me. That lie was the breaking point, because the entire plaza had watched the opposite, silent, controlled. Even when struck, Darius finally took one step forward, not toward Riggs, but toward the truth. Officer Riggs, he said, look at me. Riggs didn't want to, but instinct forced his eyes upward. And in that gaze, he saw something that scared him more than any weapon. A man who was not afraid. A man who knew the system better than the man abusing it. A man who had the power to dismantle everything Riggs believed he controlled. Darius spoke with calm precision. You struck me before asking a single question. Riggs swallowed. You escalated without cause. Riggs's lip twitched. You pushed me twice while accusing me of resisting something I never did. Riggs trembled. And when witnesses challenged your actions, Darius continued, you threatened them with arrest. Silence. You don't know what I deal with every day, Riggs croaked. Darius tilted his head. You assume I don't know, he said quietly, because you assume you're the only one who lives with fear. Riggs blinked, confused. And that is when the flashback hit not for Riggs, but for Darius. His memory cracked open like an old scar beneath fresh pressure. He was 15 again, riding his bike home from basketball practice. Blue lights flooded the street. 2 officers told him he fit the description. Quote, hands on the hood, backpack emptied, heart pounding. His mother arrived, screaming his name, terrified he might not survive the mistake that his face was enough to justify. Years later, when he sat on panels addressing systemic bias, he never spoke of that day. Not because he forgot, because millions of others had lived it too. The crowd saw something shift in his face as he remembered, not anger, not pain, but a long-lived truth. When he refocused on Riggs, his voice was steady again. You think fear belongs only to you? Darius asked. You think the badge is the only shield? Some of us walk through this world earning fear we never asked for. Riggs stepped back again, a retreat disguised as movement. Darius's tone sharpened. And today, you punished me for existing, not resisting. Phones captured every syllable. Emma whispered, this is history. Quote, Lena's eyes glistened shame and clarity, both rewriting the day inside her. Riggs tried one last time. You can't pin this on me. I didn't know who you were. That, Darius said, is the point. The mother near the fountain whispered a single sentence that carried across the concrete. Imagine how he treats people who aren't in charge. The crowd murmured in agreement, a rumble of truth that could not be ignored. Riggs's shoulders sagged. He had finally realized he hadn't assaulted a stranger. He'd assaulted accountability itself. And then Darius said the words that snapped the last thread holding Riggs upright. You laid hands on the man assigned to investigate misconduct, and you did it in front of an entire city. Riggs's face drained white. Darius stepped back, not in retreat, but in authority. Your actions, he said quietly, have consequences. Quote, that was the exact moment Officer Riggs understood. This was no longer an incident. It was evidence. The moment Darius said the word consequences, something shifted in the plaza. Not visually, nothing dramatic happened at first, but the air changed. It felt heavier, more intentional, like the city itself was waiting for the next move. Riggs sensed it too. He straightened, forcing his voice into authority again, clinging to the last threads of control. You think you can just walk in here, claim you're somebody important, and everyone's going to believe you? But there was no strength left in his tone, only fear wrapped in volume. Darius didn't answer. Instead, he reached slowly into his pocket. Riggs flinched. Hands shot to his holster. "Hey, don't reach. It's a phone," Darius said calmly. The plaza held its breath. He didn't raise it like a threat. He didn't wave it like a weapon. He simply tapped a single contact, one labeled Avery, Ops Director, with a quiet confidence that made the crowd lean in. A voice answered immediately. "Sir?" The crowd didn't know this voice, but Lena did. Her eyes widened, because she recognized the tone of someone high in the chain, someone who didn't say hello but sir, as if the call was expected or feared. Darius spoke without turning away from Riggs. "Avery, activate Protocol Meridian." Quote. A sharp inhale traveled through the plaza. Even those who didn't know what it meant felt the weight of it. "Confirming," Avery replied. "Is this related to the field incident you anticipated this week?" The crowd murmured. "Anticipated?" Riggs swallowed hard. "Yes," Darius said, "and it has escalated." Avery's tone shifted, locked in, surgical. "Understood. Executing now. Internal Affairs, City Legal, and Oversight liaisons will have the live feed in 60 seconds. Quote. Riggs's face drained. Wait, what live feed?" Avery continued, unfazed. "I'm also pulling GPS data for all body cams within a 300-foot radius. If any officer disabled, removed, or failed to activate theirs, it will be flagged immediately." Lena's head snapped toward Riggs. His body cam, it was off. Riggs instinctively slapped a hand over it too late. Avery's voice remained calm, efficient. "Sir, IA is requesting the officer's badge number to accelerate the misconduct log. Do you want that included now or upon dispatch arrival?" Riggs panicked. "Stop this. Stop talking to him. This isn't real. This isn't..." But it was real. Too real. And everyone could see it. Darius locked eyes with Riggs. "Badge number will be provided," he said softly. Riggs backed up another step. No. You can't zaw this. You can't just..." "You did this," Darius replied. Phones in the crowd captured everything. Emma whispered, "Oh my God, he really is in charge." Quote. The teenager with the phone stared wide-eyed. He called a protocol, like a whole system. His mother nodded slowly, awe replacing fear. "That's what Oversight looks like." Riggs tried to regain footing. "You think calling your assistant scares me? IA doesn't even respond this fast." Darius's gaze didn't flicker. "It does," he said, "when they've been monitoring this officer for 6 months." The plaza erupted in gasps. Riggs's breath hitched. His eyes darted to Lena. You reported me?" Lena's voice trembled. "Not me." But her eyes said everything. She knew about the complaints. She knew about the early warnings. She knew about the supervisor notes the department kept shoving into drawers. Darius raised the phone again. "Avery, status." "Sir," Avery replied, "Internal Affairs is now connected. They've requested a verbal summary from you, and they will archive the civilian footage being recorded." That last part made Riggs choke on his breath. "You can't do that. They can't take people's phones." "They aren't," Darius said softly. "They're archiving live streams." Avery confirmed. "All uploads tagged within this location are syncing to the legal vault. Nothing can be erased." Phones in the crowd buzzed simultaneously. A notification appeared. "City Oversight received your video. Thank you for contributing to Public Safety Review." Emma gasped. "Oh, wow." The businessman exhaled hard. This is real government stuff." Quote. Riggs stumbled backward, almost tripping over his own boot. "You don't have this power. You don't. I don't even..." "Yes," Darius said gently. "You did." Riggs froze as if the words themselves had weight. And then Darius added, quietly but firmly, "You assaulted a civilian before verifying a threat. You escalated without cause. You attempted a false arrest. You disabled your body cam. You threatened witnesses." Each charge hit like a hammer. Darius lowered his phone, but Avery was still on the line. "Avery," he said, "continue phase 2. Notify the chief's office. They will want a transcript." Riggs shook, voice breaking. "You can't end my career over one mistake." Darius stepped closer, not aggressive, but inevitable. "One mistake." His voice was quiet, but the plaza heard every syllable. "You hit me the moment you saw me. You didn't ask a question. You didn't assess a threat. You didn't see a man. You saw a category." Quote. Riggs's mouth opened, but no words came. Darius spoke one more time, the line that made several witnesses exhale sharply. You didn't just assault a supervisor, Officer Riggs. You assaulted the future of accountability. Riggs started, pale, trembling. Avery's voice echoed faintly from the phone. Sir, IA confirms they'll be on scene in 4 minutes. The crowd erupted. Lena looked at Darius with something bordering on respect. Riggs looked at him like the ground had disappeared. And Darius stood in the calm he had earned. For a long, suspended moment, Riggs said nothing. His mouth opened, closed, opened again as if language itself had abandoned him. The radios, the phones, the chatter, the city, everything shrank into a thick silence that wrapped around him like a noose. Internal affairs was minutes away. Avery was still on the line. The crowd was recording from every angle. And standing directly in front of him, calm, composed, resolute, was the man he had struck without hesitation. Darius King finally lowered his phone and put it away, a motion so soft, so deliberate, it felt like the closing of a case file. Officer Riggs, he said quietly, do you understand what happens next? Riggs swallowed hard. I didn't know who you were. That, Darius replied, is the problem. The words cracked through the plaza like a lightning strike. The maintenance worker who first recognized Darius whispered, "This is it. Here comes the reveal." Emma covered her mouth. Lena stood frozen. The teenager pointed his phone at Riggs like capturing the moment was a civic duty. Darius stepped into the open center of the plaza, not confrontational, but undeniable. He looked at the crowd first, then at Riggs. When I arrived here today, he began, I wasn't here as an official. I wasn't here to supervise. I wasn't here to judge. Quote. His tone was calm, almost mournful. I was here as a citizen, a man tying his shoe, a neighbor walking through his city. Every witness felt the weight of that simplicity. But you, he said, turning to Riggs, saw none of that. The plaza held its breath. You didn't see a man tying his shoe. You saw a threat. You didn't see a citizen, you saw a problem. You didn't see a human, you saw a stereotype you felt comfortable striking. Riggs's eyes widened with a kind of drowning panic. That's not what happened. It's exactly what happened, Darius said, voice steady, surgical, unarguable. And I know it, he added, because I've lived it too many times to misread it. That line sent a ripple through the crowd. Every black parent watching nodded in painful recognition. Every ally felt the floor of their understanding expand. But the reveal wasn't finished. Darius's posture shifted, not threatening, not dramatic, but powerful enough to make Riggs stiffen. When he spoke next, the tone changed. Warmer, quieter, sharper. Officer Riggs, he said, my name is Darius Alexander King. Riggs blinked, trembling. I am the executive director of the District Public Safety Oversight Board. Silence. I oversee all misconduct investigations for precincts in this district. The air exhaled in a chorus of gasps. Emma stumbled back a step. The businessman muttered, Holy, wow. Lena put a hand over her heart, but Darius wasn't done. And today, he continued, you escalated force without cause, disabled your body cam, attempted a false arrest, and threatened civilians for questioning misconduct. Riggs's face turned the color of wet paper. Then came the line that was destined to go viral, stitched across social media, replayed in news panels, quoted for years. Darius stepped closer, lowering his voice enough that Riggs was forced to absorb every word. You called me a threat in a system I oversee. Quote, phones shook as people held them tighter. You treated me like an outsider. In a city I help govern. Riggs stumbled backward. You struck me, Darius continued, for tying my shoe, while I hold the power to audit every second of your conduct. The plaza erupted in murmurs that felt like thunder rumbling just below the surface. Riggs tried to find words, any words. You can't just ruin my career. I'm not ruining it, Darius replied. I'm documenting it. Quote, a woman near the back whispered, oh my God, that's a bar. The teenager yelled, say it again! But Darius stayed controlled. You didn't lose your career today because of who I am, he said. You lost it because of what you chose to be. Riggs's knees softened. And make no mistake, Darius said, his tone now firm enough to anchor the entire plaza. I would have taken the same action even if I were not your superior. That struck deeper than the reveal itself, because it wasn't about hierarchy. It was about humanity. Riggs whispered, voice shattering. Please, I made a mistake. No, Darius said. A mistake is accidental. What you did was deliberate. Lena stepped forward, tears brimming. He's right, she said quietly. I saw everything. I knew you were losing control. I should have stepped in sooner. Riggs turned on her like a wounded animal. You're turning on me? No, she said. I'm standing with the truth. Quote. And with that, the plaza shifted again, the crowd now entirely on one side. The witnesses weren't observers anymore. They were part of the moment. Part of the justice. Part of the reveal. Internal affairs would arrive any minute, but the real verdict had already been delivered. When the reveal settled over the plaza, something inside Riggs cracked. Not the loud kind, more like a hairline fracture beneath too much pressure, spreading with each second of silence. He staggered backward, barely noticing that his hand had slipped off the holster, fingers trembling uncontrollably. The man who moments earlier barked commands now looked like someone trying to wake from a nightmare as it kept unfolding around him. The crowd didn't shout, didn't boo, didn't jeer. That was the worst part. They simply watched him. Witnesses. Every single one. Lena broke first. She adjusted her posture, stepping toward Darius as though instinct not protocol pulled her into alignment. Sir, she said to Darius, almost whispering, Internal affairs is almost here. I can see their vehicle entering the plaza. The words hit Riggs like a blow. His eyes snapped toward the street, where two unmarked black sedans rolled to a stop. From them emerged three investigators in plain suits, badges already visible. They moved with purpose, not rushed, not frantic, but the unshakable professionalism of people accustomed to arriving after the damage had already been done. The crowd parted for them. Not out of fear, out of recognition. This was procedure now, real procedure, the kind Riggs had mocked like it didn't matter. One of the IA officers, a woman with sharp eyes and braided hair pulled into a tight bun, spoke first. Mr. King. Darius nodded. She turned to Riggs next, not with anger, not with surprise, but with the exhaustion of someone who had seen this story too many times. Officer Riggs, she said, step forward. Riggs froze. Then, in the smallest voice he had used all day. Do I have to? Yes, she said. Her tone carried the weight of law. Now. Riggs moved like gravity itself had doubled. When he reached the IA team, the lead investigator lifted a small tablet and tapped a button. Body cam status, off, she confirmed aloud. Timestamp, off-duty override not applied. Lena closed her eyes. She knew what that meant. Everyone did. Next, the investigator gestured to the crowd. We have 46 independent civilian recordings synced to the city vault, she said. All unsolicited. A murmur of pride swept through the witnesses, small but real. Emma whispered, We did that. The teenager nudged his mom, grinning. They can't delete anything now. Quote. Another investigator stepped in front of Riggs, holding a scanner. Officer, present your badge. Riggs clutched it to his chest. No, wait, please, let's talk. It's not a discussion, the investigator replied. It's documentation. The phrase echoed the line Darius had spoken moments earlier. Darius didn't intervene. He didn't need to. This was no longer his battle. It was the system Riggs feared the most, the one no amount of shouting or posturing could intimidate. Riggs slowly extended his badge, hand shaking as though it weighed 10 pounds. The investigator scanned it. The tablet beeped. Badge access revoked, she announced. It happened so fast that the crowd gasped. A businessman whispered, That's it? Just like that? That, his friend replied, is what immediate accountability looks like. The second investigator stepped closer. Officer Riggs, place your department, issued firearm on the tray. Riggs' voice cracked. Please, don't do this. I've served this city for 12 years. And today, the investigator said gently, you failed it. Riggs's hand wavered. He placed the gun down. The metallic click echoed across the plaza. Lena looked away, holding back tears. The first investigator returned to Darius. Mr. King, would you like to provide a verbal statement for the record now or after the on-site interview? Darius shook his head lightly. No statement yet. The recordings speak for themselves. The investigator nodded. Understood. Then she turned to Riggs. Officer Riggs, you are temporarily relieved of duty pending full investigation. Riggs broke. Actually broke. This isn't fair. You don't understand. He provoked. He didn't, men. Darius spoke quietly, cutting through the panic without raising his voice. I asked you 3 times to stop touching me. I told you I wasn't resisting. The witnesses told you. Your own partner told you. Riggs stared at the ground. You chose force, Darius continued. You chose escalation. And now you're facing the consequences you believed you were immune to. Emma whispered, That's justice. The maintenance worker crossed his arms, nodding. Long overdue. Lena stepped forward again, not toward Riggs, but toward Darius. Sir, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Darius met her eyes. You spoke up, he said softly. When it mattered. Quote. She swallowed hard. Not soon enough. Darius's expression shifted gentle but firm. Courage isn't measured in timing, he said. It's measured in choice. Behind them, the IA officers instructed Riggs to stand with them. When he refused, they took him gently by the arms, not violently, not aggressively, but with the dignity he had denied others. As they guided him toward the sedan, the plaza watched, not celebrating, not mocking, just witnessing the collapse of something that had needed to fall. The silence that followed felt like a deep exhale, the kind cities rarely get, the kind that marks the end of a storm. But Darius? He stood still, knowing one truth. This wasn't closure. It was the beginning. The plaza felt different now. Not tense, not fearful, not chaotic, just awake. As the IA vehicles pulled away with Riggs in the back seat, the crowd slowly realized they were witnessing something rare, something people spend years begging systems to deliver. Immediate, transparent, uncompromised, accountability. No waiting, no cover-up, no excuses, just truth standing in broad daylight. Darius didn't move at first. He watched the sedan disappear down the street, its taillights blinking like fading embers of a fire finally extinguished. Then he took a breath, the kind of breath a man takes after carrying weight on his shoulders for far too long. A woman near the crowd stepped forward, her voice quiet but urgent. Sir, are you okay? She didn't ask it as a witness. She asked it as a human being. Darius turned to her, offering a nod that carried gratitude more than words could hold. I'm fine, he said softly. But thank you. Emma, still clutching her apron and milk jug, stepped forward next. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry you had to go through that. We all saw it. We all knew it was wrong. Darius met her eyes. You spoke up, he said. That matters. More than you know. The teenager, the one who had pulled up Darius's picture, first raised his phone again, but this time not to record, just to capture the moment. You really changed everything today, he said, awe draped across every syllable. But Darius shook his head. No, he replied, we did. Quote. The plaza hushed, leaning into his words like a classroom listening to the lesson it needed most. Darius stepped forward, not onto a stage, not onto a podium, but onto the bare concrete where the incident began, the place where Riggs had struck him, the place where everything nearly spiraled into something worse. He turned to face the crowd fully. When I arrived here today, he said, I didn't want attention. I didn't want power. I didn't want a scene. The crowd absorbed every word. But I've learned something I wish wasn't true. He paused. Silence doesn't protect you from being mistreated. A murmur of agreement swept through the witnesses. A few nodded. A few wiped tears. Even Lena stood rooted in place, listening like her entire career depended on this moment. Darius continued. For years, people have told me, stay calm. Don't react. Don't make waves. Just get home safe. He scanned the faces around him, but being calm didn't stop him from hitting me. Being polite didn't stop him from shoving me. Being quiet didn't stop him from calling me a threat. The plaza stood still. And that, Darius said, voice firming, is why accountability has to be immediate, visible, uncompromised. He let the words settle the same way dust settles after a quake. The badge should protect the public, he said, not shield misconduct. Emma whispered, yes, under her breath. And justice, Darius added, shouldn't depend on how loudly we scream. It should exist even in silence. He paused again. The wind brushed through the plaza, weaving into the crowd like a quiet agreement. He didn't raise my voice today, Darius said. I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't let anger write my choices. His eyes lifted, catching every camera, every witness. And yet justice happened. The crowd exhaled a collective release that felt like hope. Darius finished. I don't believe in shouting for dignity. I believe in living it, and demanding systems honor it. He stepped back. I didn't raise my voice, he repeated softly. I raised the standard. A beat of silence followed the kind that becomes a memory. Then the plaza erupted, not in chaos, not in fear, but in applause raw, relieved, righteous applause. Phones lifted higher. People cheered, some cried, some simply stood still, letting the moment wash over them like the first warm sunlight after a storm. Lena approached slowly. Sir, she said quietly. "I'll give my full statement. Everything I saw, everything he did." Darius nodded. "I appreciate that, Officer Ruiz." She swallowed. "I want to help fix what's broken." He held her gaze steady, respectful. "Then start by telling the truth," he said. "It's the strongest tool any of us have. Quo." The crowd began to disperse, not in urgency, but in reverence. People whispered to one another. "That man changed the city today. He didn't even raise his voice. He took down corruption the right way. That's leadership. That's dignity." Darius remained for a moment longer, standing exactly where it all began, letting the weight of the afternoon settle into him not as trauma, but as purpose. He took one last look around the plaza, a place where he had been hit, shoved, insulted, and a place where he had stood firm, spoken truth, and changed everything. Then he turned and walked away. Not in triumph, not in anger, but in certainty. Because today had proven something undeniable. Power isn't loud, justice isn't violent, and dignity, once claimed, cannot be taken.